Hello dear friends, welcome back to my channel, Elena and the Book Hunt. It's time to wrap up the month of May and I've had such an amazing reading month. I've been in such a mood to read, and it's because I think I've been picking up very many different books that kind of leave me wanting to read more. I don't know what it is, but I've just been picking up very interesting reads and I'm going to talk about all of them in a moment. I think I read about 11 books in the first part of the month, and a couple of them were historical fiction, a couple of them were sports romances. I had a fantasy read as well, so there is a good mix of books within the list, so please stick around to see which ones I read. And I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. The first book I read is one that was highly recommended by Caitlin from The Love Librarian, and I have to say that whatever Caitlin has recommended and I've picked up, I've really loved, so I knew that I was going to love this book. The book is a debut novel by Kayla James and it's called Lights Out. It's a Formula One romance between a hero who is this very large name on the circuit. He has been world champion a couple of times over, but he has had a very bad season the past season, so he kind of needs to start proving himself again. And then the heroine in the book is one of the first female drivers who is going to enter the circuit. And the two of them are going to be teammates because there is this newly formed team and they want to have this big name, and that's going to be a writer, but also they want to have an underdog, someone who is going to get underestimated and who is going to kind of surprise the hell of everyone on the circuit, and that's going to be Blake. Everyone is going to underestimate her because she's a woman, and at the same time, everyone is going to love her because she's just so good at what she does. So we've got two characters who are going to be teammates and they're going to go around the world on all these races together. They are going to have forced proximity, they're going to have to work together, and that is just the best kind of setup for a romance if you ask me. And the adrenaline of the races and at the same time the amazing chemistry between the characters just worked out so well. At the same time, there were so many sweet and endearing moments between the two characters that I absolutely loved. This was really a smashing debut novel for me. I gave it 4 stars. I'm so thankful to Caitlin for recommending it to me because it's available on Kindle Unlimited, so it was very easy for me to pick up. It was a fast read for me as well, and I do have to say that I did have some issue with some of the writing formatting, but it didn't kind of deter me from enjoying the story. I know that this author will only improve with more books that she writes, and I really cannot wait for the next books that she's going to release within the series. This one was a definite hit for me and I would definitely recommend it. The next book that I read unfortunately wasn't a favorite of mine, and I'm so sorry to say that because I actually have a signed copy by the author for this one. It's The Long Game by Elena Armas. I had a signed copy from her when I went to Rare in Florence, and I was just so hoping to enjoy it because it just sounded good. The premise of it sounded good. We had a hero and heroine who both were going to be grumps. It's a soccer romance and it's a small town romance, and I don't know, it just sounded like it was going to be a great setup, but unfortunately I just didn't love it. I didn't love it specifically because of the heroine. The heroine is this daughter of this soccer club owner and she really wants to get a promotion in the company. Her father is kind of an asshole and he doesn't believe in her and he doesn't really plan on promoting her. And she has this incident where she attacks the team mascot, which becomes viral, and her father thinks that she has discredited the team, so to punish her, he sends her to this small town where there is this child soccer team who is going to be part of this charity incentive for their club. And she thinks that she's going to be sent to manage an actual football team, like a soccer team. But when she finds out that that's not the case, she is really disappointed, obviously. And the hero within the story is this child soccer team's coach. He used to be a very big name as a soccer player, but he's kind of hiding out from the world in this small town, and he doesn't really want to get in the media. He wants to stay secluded, but she brings with herself a whole lot of turmoil for him and also for everyone in the town. And I didn't love this book, and like I mentioned, it's specifically because of the heroine. Like, her backstory is just so ridiculously presented because of this viral moment. Like if the focus had been more on her past relationship, which had some influence on what is going on between herself and her father, it would have been more believable for me. But this viral moment kept on being brought up in the story, and it just started to irk me on a very high level. And also the way that she was behaving was just not it for me. I did not connect with the heroine at all. I did connect with the hero, and because of the hero and the way that he wrapped up the story in the end, like the gesture he made towards the heroine really kind of made me bump up the score, or kind of my rating for this book. I gave it 3 stars, but honestly, if I were to reread it right now, I probably wouldn't give it 3 stars, and I honestly wouldn't recommend it either. Now, the next book was my 5-star read of the month, and I loved the heck out of this book. It's going to be a favorite of the year for me. The book is by Jenshak. It's called Burnout. It's her latest release, and it's a romance between a motocross racer and a gymnast. And I really haven't read a lot of books that feature motocross riders or racers, and I really love the heck out of this book. The book is centering on Knox, who is part of this large family. He has a couple of brothers, and their mother has passed away, while their father is this deadbeat person who just keeps on entering and exiting their lives. So he's essentially the main provider for their family. And then the heroine, Avery, she is a gymnast, and she used to be an Olympic medalist, but she had an injury, and she's very kind of afraid that she's not going to be able to recover well enough to go into the Olympics again. But she's doing her utter best to kind of get into the level of competing that she used to be in. And the two of them cross paths in this manner. So her best friend is dating one of the people who is in the motocross kind of world, and the two of them go to this race, and that's when they encounter each other for the first time, and they immediately feel an attraction towards each other. But at the same time, they do notice that they're absolute opposites of each other. Like, she's this girly girl wearing pink and kind of like the exact opposite of what he is. He's kind of dark, brooding bad boy wearing black and just attracting all kinds of female audience to him. And she immediately notices that he's hot, but at the same time, he's not the kind of person that she wants to be with. So the two of them are butting heads and have this banter with each other. And Knox has this very difficult predicament. I'm not going to go into it, but basically a friend of his mentions that he may need her help to improve his racing and acrobatic skills, because he's going to be doing motocross acrobatics, and she's going to be able to help him out with his acrobatics in the air. He reluctantly agrees. She starts to coach him, and just the banter that they have together, the connection, the tension, the angst, all of it is just so good. I have absolutely 0 complaints about this book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and like I mentioned, it's going to end up in my favorites of the year. Now, when I finished Burnout, I found out that actually one of the other brothers within the family also has a book. So I picked up next Tempting the Player by Jenshak, which is Hendrix's story. He is the eldest brother within the family. His backstory is similar to Knox in the way that basically whenever their father left them, he was left with figuring out how he's going to support the family. He decided that he's going to go into the NFL because he had the chance to go into the NFL, because he's going to be bringing in money that can support the family. So that is what he did, but at the same time, to the family, it looked like he had kind of left them to figure it out on their own. At least to Knox, it seemed that way. So Hendrik went into the NFL, but at the same time, he didn't really have a successful run. He was kind of left as like a backup player, if you get what I mean. So in the meantime, he decided to get like a second job where he's going to be bodyguarding, and the romance is between himself and one of his clients. So he's going to need to protect this very popular pop star. She actually lives in his hometown because she goes to the university in his hometown. So he moves back home and he can bodyguard for her while she is studying. The romance between them is really well built up. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the backstory of Hendrik with his family. I enjoyed the situation that Jane is in because she has this stalker. And it was just a really good bodyguard romance that I really highly enjoyed. I think I really enjoyed it also because I was already invested into the family that Hendrik is a part of. But regardless, it was just a really good romance. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I picked up Falling for Gage, which is the latest release by Mia Sheridan. It's actually a release that is centered in the same place where Travis and Archer's Voice is set. So I was really hoping that I was going to enjoy it as much as the other 2 books that I've read within the same setting. I didn't love it as much, I have to say. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't love it as much. We've got Gage, who is part of this very prominent family within the small town that they live in, and he's going on this all-guys trip somewhere like very close to where he lives, but in a different town. And they come about into a very bad weather situation, so they go to this bar to hide out from the storm that is going on. And he has a very hot and heavy night, like a one-night stand with one of the bartenders at this bar. This is our heroine, Rory. And Rory is desperately wanting to find her father. So she finds out that when her mother passed away, she had these journals that kind of hint towards who her father may be. He's never named, but he is presented as being this artist from a small town very close to theirs. And it turns out that the small town is where Gage lives. So Rory comes up with this plan to be this artist curator. I don't know if that's the name for it. Like, she's curating art to see if it's valuable to resell, and she goes to his small town, to these prominent, very wealthy families, to see if she can find any art that has been created by her father, to get closer to finding him. And Gage, he knows that she's not an art curator, so when he sees her doing that, he kind of suspects that she may be like this scammer or someone who's trying to take advantage of these families. So there is this kind of animosity that arises because of that situation. So there's a lot of fun things coming into the story that will make for a conflict within the book. So I really did enjoy that part. But I don't know, I really loved Archer's Voice. I liked Travis. This one was the least favorite of mine out of the 3 books that I read within the series, so I gave this one 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This book is a historical fiction, adventure-filled. I wouldn't say it's a romance. I think it's more like a historical fiction book with a romance, heavy romance subplot, if you will. We've got our heroine who is, I think she's like 17 or 18 within the book, so it's young adult as well. And she is part of this very prominent Argentinian family, but her mother and father, they are hardly around. They are always in Egypt because they want to find this treasure. They've been going back every single year to go into these archaeological sites to try to find this treasure. So she always hears about all their adventures, but she's never a part of them because she's never with them. And then one day she hears that her parents have tragically come to pass, and she wants to find out what has happened to them. So she travels to Egypt, where her uncle is based, and she's hoping that her uncle will help her out, find out what exactly has happened. But as the story goes, she's trying to suspect that her uncle is part of the sinister plot there. She's finding out that because she's a woman, there is very few people who will help her out to find out what has happened. And then her romance is with one of her uncle's henchmen. And it's just a very adventure-filled and mystery-filled and kind of tension-filled story. I enjoyed it so much, and when I posted that I was reading this book, Becky from Bex Reads let me know that it was one of her favorite reads of last year, and I can completely understand why, because I was so into the story the whole time. I wanted to find out who done it, and I wanted to find out what has happened, and will they find this treasure, and will she have her romance with the hero? And it was just so engaging. I gave this book 4 stars, and if you're a fan of movies like The Mummy, you will definitely love this book. The next book that I read is a hate to love story, which is called Hate Mail by Donna Marchetti, or Marchetti, I'm not sure how you pronounce the author's name. This book I highly enjoyed. I know that it's probably not going to be a favorite book of many people because hate to love, whenever it's done in the way that this book is done, is not always a favorite of everyone, but I just highly enjoyed it. We've got a pen pal situation between the hero and heroine when they were children. It was like a school project where they needed to exchange letters, and the boy was like, I really think that this assignment sucks, so I'm just going to write the most hateful letter that I can think of, and I'm sure that the person on the other side is just not going to reply to me, and then it will be over. But the interesting thing is that when the heroine got his letter, she's like, I'm on to you. I know what you're doing and I'm just going to reply back. And that's how their banter-filled exchanges start. And I was eating that up. I was just so invested into the letters. And then at some point the letter stopped. And in present day, we find out that the heroine, she is this weather girl. And one day when she's working, she receives this letter and she knows that it's from him. She knows that it's from him and she wants to desperately reply, but he hasn't left the returning address. And it's kind of like this game of him sending her letters and trying to provoke her to see how she's going to find him to send him a letter back. And I was just eating this book up. I really loved it. I give it 4 stars. The next book is a highly anticipated for me debut novel that I really wanted to love, but unfortunately I didn't. The book is The Kiss Countdown by Etta Easton, and it involves a hero who is an astronaut. When I first saw the cover and I saw like the premise for it, I was so in love. I really hoped that I would love this book, but unfortunately I didn't because of the heroine. The hero was an A+ hero for me, but the heroine just did not work for me. In this book, we've got the hero and heroine who I've met a couple of times while visiting the same coffee shop. And he always had an interest for her, but she was kind of reluctant and was not in a place where she could give him any attention. But they were kind of familiar with each other. And then one day when she goes to the coffee shop, she sees her ex and he has moved on. He's in a happy relationship with another woman. And she wants to let him know that she's also moved on from him. So she pretends to date the hero, Vincent. He goes along with it. And what happens next is very interesting because once like this ex departs, his sister comes into the coffee shop as well. So now he needs her to pretend to be his girlfriend as well, because he has also let his family know that he's been dating. Well, he hasn't, obviously. So there's this fake dating situation going on within this book. So the premise of the story was really great, but I just did not connect with the heroine. She was so negative and at times so judgmental, and she was just not giving the hero any chance to show and prove to her that he's a decent guy. And that to me was just, it just didn't make any sense, because he was really a decent guy and he was showing her in very many ways, but she was just so reluctant that it kind of was off-putting to me. So I gave this book 3 stars. The next book that I picked up is the very popular, very hyped Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a young adult fantasy book that is very often compared to the Hunger Games. I do get why it's compared to the Hunger Games, but at the same time, I did find that it was distinctly different from the Hunger Games, so I really enjoyed it on a different level. Within this society, we've got people who have these powers, the elites, and people who are ordinary, who don't have any powers. And essentially, if you're an ordinary, then you get killed off. So our heroine is Baden, and she is an ordinary, but she has been hiding from everyone that she is an ordinary by pretending that she's a psychic. Her father has taught her these abilities to read situations in people, which kind of seems like she's a psychic. And within the society, there is this competition where these elites will compete for this ultimate kind of honor of being the winner of these games. And she is selected to be one of the participants. And the catch within the story is that one of the participants is one of the princes of this kingdom, and he actually has the power to use everyone else's powers. So when he encounters her, he doesn't sense anything. So essentially, he's like, what is your power? I don't sense anything from you. And she's like, yeah, I'm a psychic, and it's the kind of power that you really cannot, it's just such a small power that you cannot use it. So she has been trying to prove herself over and over again that she does have a power, so she doesn't get killed off. So this essentially is the starting premise of the story, and the heroine does have a romance with the prince, with Kai, but there is also kind of the love triangle hint that the other prince within the story is falling for her as well. So it was tension filled and angst filled and action filled, and I really did enjoy it. I really get the hype behind this story. I didn't give it 5 stars because when I compare it to other fantasy romances that I've read, this definitely isn't my favorite, but I really did enjoy it, and I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. And then next up I read The Inheritance Games. That's the first book within this series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is kind of like an mystery young adult novel that was very popular a couple of years back. I have the physical copies of them, but I got a hold of the audiobook for it as well, so I decided to just pick up the audio to see if I'm going to enjoy it. It was a bit slow in reading for me. I really needed to get into the story a little bit, but once I got into it, I really did enjoy it. We've got our heroine Avery, who finds out that very mysteriously she has become the heir to this inheritance of this very prominent family. But the problem is that there's a lot of people within the family who were expecting to be inheriting a lot of that inheritance. And she's just this nobody who is not part of the family, but she gets invited into the will reading, and then everyone finds out that she inherits almost everything. And her inheritance is dependent on her living in this mansion for 1 full year. And already at the will reading, she's like, okay, so essentially I'm getting this money if I survive this 1 year, because she knows that everyone is probably going to want to get rid of her. So this is a mystery situation, because also the person who passed away, this grandfather, he essentially always was leaving a lot of puzzles and hints within his family, and he definitely did that with the purpose of them getting to know why she was selected as the person to inherit all this money. So there's a lot of clues, a lot of kind of mystery going on within this book. It was definitely very well written. It was very well paced as well. Even though it was slow for me, it was just a me thing, I think, in this situation. But yeah, in the end, I really did enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. Now, the last book that I read is one that I typically wouldn't have picked up. But I don't know, something was just calling out to me that I'm going to enjoy this book. It's a historical fiction book that centers on a woman who was living through the World War II period. The book is called The Book of Lost Names, and it's by Kristin Harmel. And it centers on our heroine Ava, who is a Jewish woman who used to live in Paris during World War II. And essentially her story is that in present time, we know that she has escaped France. She is living in the States. She is this 80-year-old librarian, and she hears something on the news. She hears that someone has found this book, and she knows that this book is her book, and it's encoded with the names of the children that she has helped escape France during World War II. And it's essentially the story of her going back to get that book and to explain what this book means and how it came about that she was helping out Jewish children escape France into Switzerland. It was very engaging, and it was very impactful, as most of the historical fiction books that center on this period are. I haven't read very many because this is not the subject type that I will gravitate towards. But this one, I just had a feeling about it that I was going to enjoy it, and I definitely did. Fortunately enough, also, there is a romance within the book that kept me engaged as well. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. So my friends, these were all the books that I managed to finish in the first part of May. Please let me know if you've read any of the books mentioned on this list and whether you enjoyed them as well. Also, let me know what you were reading this month and whether I should be on the lookout for my next 5-star read if you've read any 5-star reads this month. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to put a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.